Alright, so this video is Ciaphas Cain, the Emperor's silliest clown, fighting his funniest battles, and it is by Pancreas No Wood.
Warhammer 40k, as you all know, is full of people that love nothing more than to make sure their way of thinking is dominant in the galaxy, and will throw themselves into the fray over and over and over again to ensure this comes to pass. The Black Templars, Craftful Bealtan, pretty much all of Chaos, these are the ones that come first to me in my mind, but they're hardly the only maniacal, murderous nutjobs obsessed with fighting everything until it's all dead. And of
Yeah,
course,
that's sort of the
even if by
entire
standards of
society,
this
isn't
setting,
it?
some people in it are a bit more level-headed, there's not really many people that'll choose to back down from a fight. And then we have Caiaphas Cain. Commissar Caiaphas Cain.
Oh, Caiaphas
Hero of
Cain.
the
Why was I saying
Imperium, one of
Ciaphas?
the best and most intelligent warriors it has at its disposal, and a massive, massive coward. Fighting to ensure mankind's dominance is about the last thing on his mind at any given moment. I am no doubt sure that you know this. He's one of the more popular characters in the 40k setting by virtue of just how different he is from anything else in it. Where most characters will either rapidly throw themselves into a fight or throw themselves into a fight but complain about how grim and dark it is the whole time, Caiaphas Cain is going to run for the hills the moment he sees he has a chance to do so. And I can't blame him in the slightest for it. So to begin the new year, a fun video for everyone. Instead of finding some hidden bit of lore or analyzing the pros and cons of an army, I'm going to talk about the protagonist of my second favorite series of books right behind Godric and Felix. Get ready to learn about how you can be a massive coward, a selfish jerk, and the greatest hero possible all at the same time.
Hell
and
yeah.
before I begin to ramble on, you should know that this video is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. Millions of people around the world already play it, and please, allow me to explain why you should join the ranks. To show you some of Raid's massive supply of heroes
I knew
and
Dulogs got
recruit,
activated like a sleeper agent.
Most recent editions of the game, the Sylvan
Dulogs
Watch.
got activated like a
Nature,
sleeper
as you
agent.
no doubt know, is natural, and therefore is everywhere by default. Where some
Whoa,
people
that's
choose to
crazy.
go through all the work of building grand cities, monuments, and more to solidify their holdings, the Sylvan Watchers said, nah, that sounds like a lot of work, and chose to live in big
Bro
trees
heard the
instead.
voices
Of
and was
course, this is still
activated.
a fantasy
I can't
setting,
believe
so
this.
The jungle of Mistwood they live in isn't exactly a place where non-Sylvans can just waltz into all
My
willy-nilly.
God.
No, what's most
My
likely to
God.
happen is that you're either going to be devoured by the
I need to
mythical
hydrate,
beast
I'm
within,
thirsty.
or the Silvers are going to turn you into fertilizer for their jungle homes. I have to admit, they're at least environmentally friendly with their murder, and they do have a city for outsiders known as Arisa, so if you just can't help yourself, there's a place for you in Sylvan society. And they've got damn fine champions in their ranks. As usual, I will judge them based entirely off of aesthetic preferences, because the drip or drown, and brother, I'm floating. I quite like Pathfinder Kate, because she reminds me of Vermintide. I'm also a big fan of
Her name is just
Duaden
Kate?
Runic, because I like big monsters that smash things real goodly.
That's such a
and he,
normal
is this
name.
thing a he? Whatever it is, it
That's such a
certainly
normal
qualifies.
name.
Of course, there's more to talk about with Raid this month. There's still time for you to get in on the 12 Days of Raid Christmas event. Going on
Oh,
until
damn, this is a
January
Christmas
10th.
video?
Once you download the game, you can go to 12daysofraid.plarium.com
This is a Christmas video?
and paste your in-game player code there. The link is, of course, in the
Spelled weird, if I
description.
recall
Once you
correctly.
do,
I
you
mean,
can go on some very
C-A-I-T
fun
is still
festive
like a-
adventures, including a new minigame
still like a
to unlock
human
all
name of
sorts of
spelling.
goodies,
I want to
which
play Raid.
includes
Dulogs,
holiday-themed champions
if
with
I
even up
open
to
Discord right now, am I
$1,000
going to
in
see that
Amazon
you
gift
are playing
cards.
Raid
Now,
right
that's
now?
a spicy reward. It's available to all new players, and by
One
clicking
moment,
on
let
the
me-
link,
allow
already
me to
existing
just,
players can also get
let
a
me just have a
festival gift
look.
by using a special holiday promo code you can
Let me
find
just,
after clicking the link. And once again, Ronda Rousey, the actual real-life
see
fighter,
here.
is still available to unlock for all players just by
it
logging
appears
in
that
7
when I
times between
open
now and February
Discord,
20th. And if you use the
It
promo
appears when I
code
open
RAID
Discord,
Ronda,
it
you
says
get a
you've
3-day
been
100%
playing it
XP
for
boost,
5.5
500
hours.
silver, and 5 full energy refills to make sure she can beat the ever-loving shit out of whatever you throw her at.
It
If you
appears that
still
you've
aren't
been
convinced,
playing
I've got
it for
one more
5.5
offer for you.
hours,
After
so-
using my network of crack spies and operatives, I've secured a deal for you all. Using my link in the description or the QR code on screen right now, staring you down like the Eye of Sauron, you can get $35 worth of goodies. The epic chanting Jotun, 100k silver, 50 gems, and 2 epic skill tomes
My
to boost
God.
you even higher in Raid. All of this will be waiting for you in the inbox. That's the treasure chest with the finger pointing to it on screen. Rewards are available for 30
Whoa, that's
days and for
crazy.
new players only, so download Raid now, use my link in the description to get some goodies, and I'll see you there.
Well,
Now then, time for the funny man with the funny hat to be a funny guy. To be
Video
clear, this
time.
entire video is going to be littered with spoilers. So if you would rather
Yeah.
not have them randomly revealed to you throughout it, then perhaps this isn't the video for you. I will
No,
for the
that's
most
fine.
part try to keep them to a minimum, but this video is mostly just to talk about the fun times Cain had, and it's hard to do that without spoiling something. So if you want to be kept in the dark, maybe it's best to click away now. We all clear
that's
on that?
fine. I'm probably not
Everyone
going to
good
have
go?
time to read all the books that
Splendid.
exist in this
Caiaphas Cain
franchise.
started his life out on a hive world. I can't tell you which hive world because no one knows and he never brought it up himself. And if
Damn.
the Inquisition can't find out where he's from, I'm not going to bother trying to do it myself. Beyond that, something you'll come to find out is that he's perhaps the ultimate unreliable narrator, and a pretty good hunk of what he says is no doubt complete and utter crap. That being said, at least according to himself, his parents were killed on the line of duty serving in the Imperial Guard, and thus he was shunted off to the commissariat to learn how to be one of those gun-toting, team-killing monuments of human compassion. Apparently, the guy in charge of teaching Cain didn't quite manage to get it into his head that commissars are supposed to be assholes. Because by all accounts, Cain is a decent person, if for no other reason than self-interest. Having made it through his training with resoundingly mediocre scores in everything but sports and combat training, which as an aside, why the hell are commissars learning how to play rugby as part of their training, he began his career attached to the Valhallan 12th Field Artillery Regiment. The entire reason he chose to do this is because as an artillery regiment, they were the people least likely to have to actually fight anything. To paraphrase the man himself, all you really need to do is sit back and lob shells at someone several miles away. Of course, the second thing you need to know about Cain is that he is perhaps the unluckiest man in the entire 40k galaxy. Surpassed maybe only by the Lamentor Space Marine chapter. When deployed to face the Tyranids in his first major engagement, Cain saw that things were getting just a little bit dicey and casually decided that it was now or never. So he commandeered a vehicle to commit just a slight bit of desertion. Unfortunately for Cain, which is a phrase that applies very frequently to his life, he ran into an unnoticed flanking swarm of Tyranids and immediately turned the hell back around. He radioed in for anyone, to start firing artillery guns behind him, and when he got back to base, it was believed that instead of running for his life, he had heroically gone on a scouting mission and baited a Tyranid force into chasing him right into a killing zone. He even saved the life of Jurgen, who was soon to be his commissarial aide/paperwork bitch for the rest of his career. Not wanting to admit that he just tried to run for his life, since that probably would have gotten him shot, Cain humbly accepted the praise that was being heaped upon him. What stands out most to me is that the guy in charge of the regiment,
I've decided he looks like this, live with it.
That correctly, never fully believed Cain. Indeed, for the rest of his life, he was the only one who ever had any doubts about Cain's heroic reputation. Aside from Amberly Vale, but she read his memoirs, so that's kind of cheating. From there, Cain would go on to form a bond with a few people in the regiment, including an artillery gunner who was one of the only people to ever call him by his first name, or rather, he just kept calling him Kai. This pissed Cain off, but either the guy was completely oblivious to it, or he just found it funny to annoy Cain. From there, he would soon find out that while going along with him being a hero meant he wouldn't be killed for dereliction of duty, his reputation meant that he was expected to be a lot more of a frontline combatant than he had ever wanted to be. Feeling pressure to keep accepting these tasks for fear of being found out and executed, his reputation kept growing and growing and growing, which meant that he was given even more dangerous tasks and responsibilities over time, which meant his reputation would grow more and more. He remarks on this several times, so to the series' credit, it never really gets annoying or too self-pitying. Plus, it's just really funny watching him dig himself further in the hole he created for himself. Eventually, he would find himself given a job to the Commissariat Command. Now, you might think he'd be ecstatic about this, and at first he was, but his reputation meant that whenever a commissar was needed for a dangerous job, the first person people thought to ask was good old Caiaphas Cain. This list of crap he was put through includes, but is not limited to, several campaigns against the Craftworld Eldar, cleansing a space hulk that some Astartes and tech priests had a massive cyber boner over, and a trip that led to him being the only survivor after a tomb world started reawakening during an expedition to it. Of note is that this little adventure of his is the one that left him most scarred out of anything he ever did. And for reference, he has at least on one occasion been kidnapped by Eldar who were likely of the dark variety. He even lost 2 of his fingers. I mentioned this little story partly because it shows how badass he is, that he got lost inside a tomb complex that was able to escape, and partly because it shows that chaos isn't the scariest thing in the galaxy by a wide margin. Because if there was anyone familiar with being afraid, it was Cain, so he undoubtedly knew who was truly scary. To those of you who disagree with my assessment, please lick my taint. After this sort of thing happened enough times, he begged to be given back to a regiment to work with, because apparently serving with the active combatants is less dangerous in this setting than filing paperwork. Though to be fair, Jurgen is the one who did most of the paperwork. He was given command of the combined remains of the Valhallan 301st and 296th regiments, and they fucking hated each other. The only reason they were combined was because Tyranids had eaten the rest of the lot and reinforcements wouldn't be sufficient enough to bring him back to full strength. One was all female, the other was all male. His first job as the regimental commissar was to figure out how to make them get along in time to prevent them from all killing each other, because at least a few of them had decided to do just that. To do this, he disciplined those who were the worst offenders, though not in the traditional way of bolt gun to the face. Things like the treen duty for the next year, something like that. After this, he renamed the regiment the Valhallan 597th, an absolutely ingenious move he came up with by adding their numbers together. It fostered unity between the two once separate groups while honoring the fact they were once two different regiments. He kept himself in their good graces further by coming up with a tradition among the regiment of actually rewarding good behavior and things beyond suicidal bayonet charges, as well as improving morale by way of speeches, camaraderie, and other feel-good methods instead of blowing someone's head off because they suggested things were anything less than 100% perfect. Funnily enough for Cain, he brought the two regiments together so well that he went from having to discipline people for things like murdering their fellow soldiers to disciplining the troops for things like lovers' quarrels and getting each other pregnant in an active war zone. Going forward, he would spend the most of his career with
doing what? I also like the phrasing of getting each other pregnant, as in, like, both people in this party. Congrats on the MPreg.
This newly formed regiment, actually forming a close relationship with the two leading officers of it. I cannot understate the importance of this, because commissars are almost always considered to be the biggest asshole in the army by the rest of it. The only other one I can think of off the top of my head who wasn't disliked if not outright hated by his troops was Gaunt, and to say his circumstances were exceptional would be underselling it. Instead, Cain was undoubtedly the single most loved and appreciated member of the regiment. Soldiers would never flinch in fear when he walked by and would even salute him. This isn't actually required of them, as commissars actually lie outside the chain of command of the guard, but they valued Cain so much they happily considered him their superior. The officers in charge of the Valhallan 597th, Regina Castine and Rupert Brocklaw, would even regularly heed his advice, so high was their opinion of him. Again, this is not something they are in any way required to do, as a commissar's only official duties boil down to making sure there's no heresy going on and making sure the troops are fighting to the best of their ability, usually by shooting anyone who looks even remotely afraid. Instead, Cain treated all the soldiers fairly as people, not giving them all the same punishment of bolt gun to the brain for whatever they did. He never outright disregarded the advice of fellow soldiers, even if internally he was calling them idiots the entire time, instead reasoning with them and at least giving the appearance of valuing their input. He would internally cuss people out all the time, but he kept it to himself, which is the main thing to do when keeping appearances up. As a related aside, I recommend this strategy highly, both when dealing with your parents and your significant other. To avoid too many spoilers, I won't be summarizing the plot of the books beyond what I've given, aside from telling you some cool stories at the end of the video. Instead, let's talk about Cain himself. If you were wondering if Cain treated everyone—
I love that all he had to do, like, he literally just, he sprinted off the battlefield and accidentally got too important at work, and then got so important at work that he got sent to do a really difficult job, but then did that job so good that now he's even more important at work. Fake it till you make it, exactly. He faked it till he made it through an infinite cyclical loop. It's beautiful.
Well, because he was just that good of a guy, the actual truth of the matter is rather more complicated. As far as most people saw, this was exactly the case. He genuinely cared for those under his purview in a way that few officers in the guard did, let alone other commissars. He would throw himself into the fray alongside his soldiers without hesitation, and would never be seen far from the action once a fight started. In fact, one general of the Imperial Guard was serving in the Valhallan 597th at the same time Cain was attached to it as a lower-ranking officer. And even when she rose to become a general in the Imperial Guard because of how brilliant a commander she was, the first question she would always ask herself in a difficult situation was, what would Commissar Cain do? As you might expect, this view of him is inaccurate. In that case, what Commissar Cain would usually do is run like hell. The books are written as if they were his memoirs, edited by Inquisitor Amberly Vale. And reading them and taking them at face value, you would call Cain a complete coward. Someone who by all rights should have been shot the moment he put on his commissarial cap. He would only ever enter combat because not dealing with the problem would only make it worse later on. When given the choice to set out a fight and doing so wouldn't eventually lead to his death by inaction, he would take that choice every time. We just rarely see those moments in books because no one wants to read 200 pages of Cain sipping on Tana tea and reading casualty reports while Jurgen watches porn in the corner. No, I'm not making that up, he actually does that. If Cain thought shoving you into the path of a raging carnifex would save his life and no one would find out about it later, he'd do it in a heartbeat. Or would he? Funny thing about that unreliable narrator—
yeah, I killed a bunch of people, but like war bad and maybe I lied, haha wow. Outstandingly mid at best campaign, Battlefield 1.
Business is that when he says he was just acting to save his own skin, there's decent odds that he's full of shit. While his initial attempted desertion was certainly motivated by nothing more than a desire to not be eaten alive, everything after that is a lot more debatable. If you take his word for it, he's never done anything not motivated by selfishness. And yet as you read the books, you will find that there are many times where it seems like he acted more because of altruism and heroism. That while his public image of being a witty movie's selfless hero was at least partially built up intentionally by himself, it's also partially true to who he actually is. Imposter syndrome, aside from being something I can no longer hear without associating it with Among Us, is something
Valid,
that's
neither
damn
can
near
I.
synonymous with Cain. It's a good time to note that his memoirs are written many decades after the events actually happened. Both due to who he is and because of the fact that his reputation was ultimately founded on bullshit, it's pretty likely that a good portion of the time Cain says he acted on selfishness is really just him not giving himself enough credit. Amberly Vale, his inquisitor friend with many benefits, even says as much herself in the annotation she writes in his memoirs. For instance, many times in the series, Cain will be fighting alongside the Guard of the Planetary Defense Force, and will comment on how they seem to be fighting especially hard compared to what he would expect, or how their morale was a lot higher than you'd think it'd be in a particular situation. As Amberly is quick to point out, it seems to go right over his head that they're fighting hard because he's leading them, that they're only sticking in as much as they are because they're under the command of the legendary Caiaphas Cain and they don't want to be found wanting. This also applies to his skill as a combatant. Cain doesn't think his fighting skills are too much to brag about. Meanwhile, he's fought every single enemy the galaxy could possibly throw at him and come out on top. He's fought in melee combat with Hive Tyrants, Orc War Bosses, and Chaos Space Marines. In his words, he was barely hanging on by the skin of his teeth and only won because of a lucky break or outside intervention. Even if he's completely right, take your average commissar and throw him against a Hive Tyrant. Actually, no. Take your average Space Marine and have him face a Hive Tyrant. He's gonna be turned into Citadel brand Mephiston red paint. And yet Cain fought two and came out alive both times. Sure, the two Chaos Space
just
Marines
has no
he fought were either
self-esteem.
wounded by heavy fighting, or Cain was just parrying until Jurgen can fry them with his Melta, but these were both Cornate Chaos Space Marines. And I can assure you, with hatred in my heart, Cornate Space Marines are very good in melee combat, and Cain's fought them twice and came out on top. If you only listen to what he says, he's an asshole who just keeps getting lucky. If you take into account everything that happens, he's one of the most competent people in the galaxy with a raging case of imposter syndrome, though admittedly he is still a self-centered coward. And of course, there's that old saying about courage being the ability to keep going even when there's more shit in your pants than there is fabric. I might be misquoting that. To talk about some other characters briefly, there's three I would like to touch base.
Yeah, you know, I guess in the 40k universe, if it's kind of between people who suck all the time and people who think they suck all the time but are sometimes wrong about that, you know, I'd pick the guy who's sometimes wrong about that, you know? He seems to be at least, even if he still sucks, he's at least a little bit better than the average person.
Faces on. First off, his trusty aide gunner, Feric Jurgen. Jurgen is a total badass. He's the single best man you can possibly have watching your back. He's good in a fistfight, and he's a peerless marksman. One time, in a short story all about himself, a group of traitors tried to have him killed to avoid being caught. Jurgen tricked them by arriving to where he came from a different method to how he got there, beat the shit out of several people, and then said that the only reason he ever found out there was treachery was because the quartermaster had accurate inventory reports, and no one ever has that unless they're trying to hide something. Jurgen's a very fun character to watch do his thing. He's also a psychic blink. They found this out when Amberly Vale's pet psyker had a seizure when he walked near her. This has helped Cain survive encounters with everything from Tyranids to greater demons of Slaanesh. Said greater demon, or I guess demon princess,
Yes, there is fan art out of it. No, I'm not helping you find it.
That's a better word for it, was also incredibly thirsty for Cain's chainsword, probably both literally and metaphorically. Jurgen also smells incredibly bad. Whether this is how his repulsiveness due to being a blank manifests, or he just smells like shit, is never clarified, but you don't want to be in an enclosed room with the guy. This is a minor plot point too, because Cain
So was the seizure the psychic thing or the stench? We'll never know.
uses him as a human shield to keep people from bothering him. They need to get through the smelly wall that is Jurgen to speak to Cain, and that requires a level of fortitude most people simply do not have. For some final notes on the guy, he takes orders almost as literally as an Ogren. He assumes that because Cain is telling him to do something, there is a grand reason to be doing so, and he does whatever he's told to do without fault. He does most of Cain's paperwork as well, and carries his luggage, which he has no problems with. He's even been shown to be annoyed when he isn't allowed to do so, because in his eyes, he's Cain's assistant, and thus the only one truly qualified to do so. He not only fully buys into Cain's legend, but has never shown fear, because he just assumes whatever is happening is a part of Cain's master plan. Even with my defense of Cain earlier having been said, Jurgen could not be any more wrong, because most of what Cain does is by the seat of his pants. But it's nice to know someone has his back. And indeed, even after having served alongside the Mechanicus, the Guard's finest, and the Space Marines, he has said that there's no one he'd rather have watching his back than Gunner Jurgen. On one final note, never get in a car with him, or be on the road at the same time as him. To his credit, he's never once crashed anything he's driven, even something like an orc buggy. Unless crashing was the plan, of course. He also makes everyone riding with him nauseous and considers things like cafes, cemeteries, and imperial governor palaces to be minor obstacles to be plowed through to get to where he needs to be. And I don't think he understands the concept of a speed limit. The next character is, of course, Inquisitor Amberly Vale. Of the Ordo Xenos branch, she's very good at dealing with aliens and all that jazz. She's actually really friendly for an Inquisitor. Bit of a smartass, but she doesn't just waltz into places and scream heresy before murdering everyone, so she's got that going for her. She's got a whole gaggle of interesting people in her entourage, and she's recruited Cain to unofficially be a part of it. Both because he's Caiaphas Cain and a very capable man, and because Jurgen is a blank, and that's a very handy thing for an Inquisitor to have in her back pocket. Her pet psyker I mentioned also apparently has the biggest tits in the galaxy. Normally, I'd like to think I wouldn't bring something like that up, but Cain will not stop mentioning it whenever she's around. Usually how it goes is Cain mentions he's afraid of the psyker because she is a bit of a loon, and then he stares at her tits. To get back to Amberly, her presence is in a good amount of the books as a character, but every novel except the short stories are edited by her, so you're never going long without her input. Honestly, the series wouldn't be the same without her. Her orders are oftentimes what gets Cain into his misadventures, and Cain certainly wouldn't want her gone because even with all the danger she puts him in, she's a good friend to him, and that's always nice. By good friend, I of course mean they fuck like rabbits whenever they have the chance. She has ended his memoirs early because what they most likely ended with was Cain talking about Amberly showing him her inquisitorial rosette, if you catch my drift. It is canonical that Caiaphas Cain fucks. She's also constantly giving us additional information about Cain's adventures where he leaves gaps in the narrative, because Cain doesn't really give a shit about the larger picture if it isn't directly affecting him. Oh, and she's still an Inquisitor. If you piss her off, you are going to be unpersoned. But as far as Inquisitors go, she's about the best person you can hope to be in that profession. She doesn't just kill you because you're annoying, she'll kill you because you're hampering inquisitorial duties. I never said she was a good person, just good by the standards of people who blow up planets as part of their day job.
Exactly. In the 40k universe, it seems that the best thing you can be is just a little bit better than other people.
Lastly, Genet Sola. There are undoubtedly other...
There's no official art of her, I believe, so I have decided she looks like this because of reasons. Cain says she has the face of a horse, and I choose to believe that he's simply being an unreliable narrator for the sake of...
characters who I could talk about more instead of her, but to be honest with you, I like her the most out of all the side characters. She's steadfast, a brilliant tactician, and all around an effective commander in the Guard. She can make the most out of what she has to work with, leads from the front, and is the exact kind of person the Guard wants in charge of its forces. As you might expect, Cain can't stand her. As far as he's concerned, she's an overconfident idiot whose balls are bigger than her brain. And every time he has to interact with her, he's afraid of what crap she's gonna pull him into next. Even the overall commanders of the Valhallan 597 think she's a bit crazy. And yet repeatedly in Amberly's additions to Cain's writings, we see her giving her own memoirs of events of the story. And every single time, you get to see them addressed to her as General Genet Sola, because Genet Sola kicks more ass than any of us ever will. Cain, in his more than understandable cowardice, doesn't really appreciate that her headstrong behavior is sometimes the perfect choice for the job. And after Cain retires, she apparently rose through the ranks to become a general who won many, many campaigns. Just like I said earlier, it was Cain who Sola would attempt to emulate in her own campaigns, always asking herself what he would do in a situation if it looked grim or confusing. I adore every bit of the novel she's in. And as a final note, she probably had a bit of a crush on Cain, because you can only read so many paragraphs of her saying how great he is before you start to wonder if there was something going on there. Amberly even points that out, so I'm not just pulling a Tumblr on this one or two characters who breathed in the same room once. To round us off, there's one story I want to give about Cain that I really like, just so you know how badass these books can be. It's from the latest full novel, Choose Your Enemies, so here more than anywhere else, there be spoilers ahead. Cain was helping the 597th hold off an Eldar invasion of a world that was once a maiden world, and they kinda wanted it back. During this time, he finds a Slaaneshi cult entirely by accident, but gets saved not only by Amberly, who also ended up there by accident after she got lost in the webway, but a bunch of Eldar Farseers and Warlocks as well, who had been hunting the cult. Cain later on shifts from focusing on the Eldar to searching for the cult's main base to eliminate them, entirely because Amberly wasn't going to look a gift horse in the mouth and made him help her. Valuing both his sex life as well as his life, Cain agrees. At the climax of that book, I chose that word very specifically, Cain finds out that the cult was summoning a demon of Slaanesh at the spaceborne palace of the imperial governor of the planet. The demon princess summoned, as it turns out, was the same one who wanted his nuts. He had fought her once before
Oh.
since she became a demon, so by this point Cain fought her more times than the number of campaigns the average guardsman can expect to make it through. This time though, she starts chowing down on Eldar Soulstone, so even Jurgen's presence and that of another Inquisitor with an anti-demon staff aren't enough. So Amberly makes a few phone calls, and the battle between the Eldar fleet and the defensive space station stops. Soon enough, an Eldar ship blasts a hole in the wall so its forces can arrive to help fight the demon. Cain initially panics about this, but calms himself solely to look cool in front of Amberly, which is just the cutest thing, isn't it? As for the Eldar, well, have you ever played Titanfall and dropped your Titan on an enemy's and crushed it? 1, that's the most boner-inducing thing that's ever happened to me in a game.
That's
2,
crazy.
the Eldar must have done so too, because aside from some jet bikes taking pot shots, all they sent was a single being to fight the demon. And then, as Cain watches what he thought was a jet bike pilot get larger and larger in his field of view, an avatar of Cain lands on top of the demon princess like an ODST. There's nothing you can do to convince me that Welcome to the Jungle wasn't playing in the background of this fight. And for once, oh sweet Assyrian, for once in all of Games Workshop's recent writings, did an avatar of Cain finally get a win, and he sent the demon right back to hell. With some help, I admit, but I will take what I can get from Cain with a K by this point. Also, Cain and Cain, haha. Funny, isn't it? And thus ends my telling of Caiaphas Cain, hero of the Imperium. Of course, I ended the story with Eldar simping. It's the first video of the year, I gotta start the year off right, but I do hope you'll read these books properly, not just listen to this video. There's a lot more stuff he gets up to after all. There's a small portion of the Guard that worships Cain as a prophet of the Emperor. That book in particular, The Traitor's Hand if I recall correctly, was probably my favorite of the Cain books. Unrelated, but my apologies if my voice is sounding even more dead than usual. Kinda lost it during New Year's Eve. But I didn't wake up with a hangover, so I call it a win. Seriously though, please read these books. There's such a breath of fresh air from the usual 40k lore affair, that being everything sucks, things are bad, I know how to do nothing but complain. Thank you of course to my channel members, you are the Jurgen to my Cain, keeping me going on all of my misadventures to come. If you'd like to support the channel, feel free to subscribe or become a member. Either way, thank you for watching and take care out there.
Nice, that's fun. I love that he just seemed to fail upwards non-stop forever. He just sort of upwardly failing forever. Incredible. I'm sure Rat will read those books. I do want to read some Warhammer books at some point. It's just that I have negative free time. It's just sort of my complete lack of free time at any given moment, you know? But yeah, that was good. I like that. I like that. That was fun. I wasn't done? There's more? Oh yeah, there's 20 more seconds. There's 20 more seconds.
I would very much like to tongue punch Janet Sola's fart box. Hello any family members and friends who are watching this video. This is what you get for being inquisitive about what I do. You get to hear me say shit like that. Happy New Year, everyone.
Cool, I'm so glad I Cool, I'm so glad that I let that last Bubba is I'm so glad that I let that play out. Yay.